"A 50-gallon oil drum full of pink gin, please, John," he said. The effect of Demaric's hospitality were wearing off, but Harry didn't feel like getting sober again so soon. The steward bowed a little and smiled his customary benign smile. He was used to his young men. In front of Harry, the harbour water danced in the sun like a scene from a cinema travelogue. At this angle, you couldn't see the skein of oil or make out the rubbish floating in it. Suddenly, Harry had never felt so far from home, or far from the boy he used to be. He began scratching at his sandfly bites. The whole base was infested with them, and he'd begun his collection of angry little red blotches the very first night he'd arrived. One more burden on the load. It felt as though the whole weight of the war was on him. Harry didn't know whether it was the beautiful day that had made the island scars seem so upsetting, or whether it was seeing Dumeric that had made him realize how lonely and friendless he felt aboard his new boat. He was usually so good at putting all that stuff in a box, the way he did with fear and with the unavoidable truth of the number of boats and crew they were losing. No point in dwelling on it, nothing you could do. It even made him remember how happy he had been to see Granger, of all bloody people, sitting here the night he'd finally managed to arrive from Gib, and to learn that Granger, of all people, was going to be his new number one aboard his new submarine Umbrage. What a false dawn that had been. Oh yes, he remembered that night well. The Sunderland that had flown him in from Gib had touched down at the seaplane base at Calafrana just before dusk, and one of the few RAF 300-weight trucks still running, most were up on bricks in a bid to conserve fuel, had dropped him at the Lazaretto's door. He'd lugged his kit up the stairs, and there was Granger, the friend from Trebuchet days that he hadn't seen since they'd managed to coax their battered boat all the way back from Norway's North Cape. Just. He called Granger his friend, for want of a better description. Granger, the man who had come back for Harry, after he'd been left lying wounded in the dark on an enemy deck, while a gun action with enemy transports raged all around them. Harry already dead, according to the other sailors from his boarding party, but Granger hadn't believed them. He had turned their dinghy around and gone to look for his missing man, even though he risked being left behind himself. Apart from that selfless deed, Granger had always remained a remote figure to him. But then he'd remained a remote figure to everyone. And now here was Harry arriving in this strange, new and dangerous posting, and there, waiting for him, completely unexpected, had been Granger. Harry remembered the grin that had split his face right up until Granger had begun telling him his news, that their gunnery officer on Trebuchet, the Tigger, also wounded in that action, had eventually died of his wounds. Harry couldn't work out how that could be, after the lad had survived so long. But dead he was. And then there was their skipper, the irrepressible Andy Trumbull. "After the bucket, they gave him one of the new S-boats," Granger had said. "Overdue, presumed lost last month. The word is a mine got them. Somewhere in the Skagerrak. No survivors. The bucket's gone too. Constructive total loss. The dockyard people were amazed she managed to get us back as far as Shetland, apparently. Chopped up for razor blades now, I imagine." And that had been before Harry went to report to the base staff officer operations, known affectionately, or perhaps not, as the Sioux, only to learn that HMS Nimue, the N-class sub he was supposed to join, was overdue, presumed lost too, and that he had instead been appointed navigator on Umbrage. If Harry had arrived on Malta when he was supposed to, instead of ending up in that holiday camp on Mallorca, he'd have been on her, and dead now. Everybody knew the losses had been terrible. Even the newspapers back home had to admit it. But somehow it seemed different when it was people you knew who were filling the lists. Who'd been the first to get it? Sells, of course. His friend from his class at King Alfred. Blown up by a mine off Mercia Island, wasn't it? He couldn't even remember his face now. Then there'd been Sandeman and McVeigh, and all the others who didn't make it out of Pelorus. And now the Tigger and Andy Trumbull. He was going to die in this war. Why not? Everyone else seemed to.